All right, guys. Well, I'm back today discussing tariffs and how the tariffs may affect you and how to prepare for tariffs from China and a wide variety of other countries because they're starting to have real world impacts and they have taken effect as of end of last week. Now, there is a lot of things we're going to be discussing, and even though this is a kind of political video in nature, we're not going to be discussing politics and we're not going to be discussing whether tariffs are a good idea or a bad idea. I'll leave that for you guys in the comment section below. Have it out. I'd love to hear your thoughts and opinions. I'm going to be discussing today how they will affect you. Two companies I'm involved with that will have a direct correlation in pricing versus the new tariffs and how long they last and if they ever go away. And we're also going to be discussing how you can prepare and better understand what is going on. To start off with, let's talk about tariffs and what tariffs are. In a nutshell, if another country makes a product and we import it in, we always pay import tax. And when I say we talk about the importer themselves. Let's talk about this knife, for instance. If this knife is made in China and I own the knife company, when I bring this in, I pay a tariff or an import tax to the government to sell this product in the U.S. Now, essentially what that does is it makes U.S. products a little bit more competitive. Well, right now, though, the tariffs seem to be getting out of control. And when I say out of control, just unrealistic to bring products in and have them at affordable prices at all. And I believe that is the point of a lot of tariffs. The fact that China can say, make this knife for $10 and sell it in the U.S. for $30 means a U.S. company would have to produce a similar knife of quality materials for about $10 or $20 to sell it for $30 in the U.S. And that seems impossible with labor rates and cost of materials in the U.S. So then you start seeing people choosing Chinese cheaper products over U.S. made knives in this, for instance, or example, because a lot of the U.S. knives are selling for $80. So what the U.S. government can do is put a 300% tariff on this knife, and then they have to bring it in for $30 and then sell it for $80 to be cost effective after shipping rates. And then that competes with the U.S. produced knife at $80. But that now leaves you with two options. The Chinese made $80 knife and the U.S. made $80 knife. And that's it. You don't have a $30 knife choice anymore, and that's what we're seeing take effect. Right now, after the additional 34% tariffs added on to Chinese imports, we are at 54% tariffs, and it used to be a lot more affordable than that, right around 10%, but we're not going to get into too much of the subtle details. Now, for me and my knife company, I import my knives from China, and the only way we can get a cost-effective knife, something like this 14C 28N coated steel, micarta handles, reversible pocket clip, crossbar lock. When you price these out here in the U.S. for me to get these made, I would have to sell them for about $200 a piece to make this knife with these materials starting from scratch. You know, finding a knife company that would do it, and that would be if a knife company would do it. Now, when we bring these in and sell them, and this one's actually, shameless plug right here, $32.99 on sale on Amazon, which gives you guys a really high value option. Again, 14C 28N steel, micarta handles, crossbar lock, and it gives you a knife that you can afford with free prime shipping for about $33 to you guys. Now, with that additional 54% tariffs on all imports of these types of knives and materials, you are now looking at a knife that I would have to sell for $50 to $60, which is going to still be a lot more cost effective than purchasing a US made $200 knife with these same specs and features. Now, granted, the US made ones would potentially have better quality. Now, China's doing a really good job at producing knives, and so are other countries, but you're going to be supporting U.S. labor, U.S. jobs, and there's a lot to be said for that. But at the end of the day, your prices still go up on these knives. Now, for me, our company saw this coming, so we stocked a ton of inventory in our warehouses, and I can happily say we will not be increasing prices on any of our knives for a while unless we sell out through our entire shipment of inventory, and then we have to bring them in at more expensive prices. And that's the other thing about tariffs. You know, China is not paying these tariffs. Mexico is not paying these tariffs. U.S. citizens bringing in the products will be paying these tariffs, and that encourages me to source my knives again from a U.S. vendor. Now, let's talk about some of those examples of why that's kind of difficult right now, especially after NAFTA in the 90s. Again, if you guys disagree or want to argue, this is not trying to be political, just trying to kind of explain what's going on. We went in search of a U.S. knife company that could produce our knives. And everybody I called said, no, we're not doing that. We're not making those types of knives, or the factories themselves are owned by name brand companies, and they are not allowing their factories to produce other companies' knives. So you would have to essentially start a knife factory from scratch. Now, for me, I am a lowly YouTuber here on the internet. I do not have a few $1,000,000 to invest in a knife factory to start making folding knives of this quality. Now, you will see a lot of companies, for instance, like Primitive Bear Knives that I've reviewed on the channel, that hand make some pretty awesome USA made knives. And I absolutely love their knives. And they start at about $190 for a smaller fixed blade, which are amazing quality. Love supporting made in USA companies, but that still leaves some people wanting some more affordable knives, something like this $35 fixed blade that has some really nice quality to it, because maybe they want to throw one in a car bag, a bug out bag, a camp bag, or have a couple extra in their battle belts, and they can't spend $190, or in this case, a similar handmade USA one would be pushing $250, $300. So they can't afford to put that in every single platform, so they rely on overseas products that labor is a little bit cheaper. Now, another thing I want to mention is watches and different components, even if they're assembled in the U.S. Now, I believe Erebus is assembled in China and imported, but just let's take a look at watches. Say we are importing the parts, but we are assembling them in the U.S., having workers assemble products here. And I can give you another example. I used to work for a microwave-based laboratory equipment company, and we assembled everything here in the U.S. We were a manufacturing facility in the U.S. providing U.S. jobs. But we were importing some of the products, some of the electronics from Japan. We were importing some of them from China. We were importing them from the UK, Germany. All of those now will have some insanely high tariffs, and our margins are slim. And that is going to hurt business. That's going to cause us to guarantee lay off U.S. jobs, because we can't source those components from other countries, or we can't have them here. One, the U.S. does not produce a lot of those electronics anymore. And again, for the U.S. to start producing factories and facilities to make those electronics again would be years and years in the making. Along with all of our regulatory approvals of making new factories, the prices would go up so high on electronic components, and you wouldn't even see those electronic components be made for potentially 4 to 5 years or even a decade before some of these factories started actually popping up and producing products, just because of some of the regulatory hurdles we have in the U.S. and the fact that they don't know if these tariffs are permanent or not, or the next administration is going to come in. People may wait it out, so there's going to be a lot of issues with that. Another thing is I'm involved in another sheet metal company where we make a sheet metal product. I don't want to talk too much about it. I'm a small stakeholder. I do some of the engineering work for them. We actually bring in a product that's made out of sheet metal, and this is where the tariffs really hit me and really get me frustrated. For an entire year, for 365 days, I called every sheet metal vendor I knew in the U.S. I cold called everybody. I talked to vendors that I had been working with going on 10 to 12 years, have played golf with, have relationships, and they would not touch this sheet metal project. They would not touch it. They said, we don't do that. That's overseas now. We do not form that style sheet metal. Oh, and if we do make a custom form, we can potentially try to do that, but your tool is going to be about $120,000 for that tool. But when we scale up that product, we are still talking about maybe $600 to $1,000 per product your cost, which means to be relevant, you're going to have to sell this product for right around $3,000 to make it effective. And that is after, I would say, 2 tools for the 2 different components, a third tool for assembly. We were looking at about $500,000 for investment. And then we were looking at 1,000 to 1,500 per product after we got up to scale after the initial investment. So we are looking at close to $1 million in startup costs to sell this sheet metal product. Now, here's the thing. These sheet metal products currently sell being made overseas here in the US for $150. So right now, they're importing them from China and selling them on the market for $150 or as low as $100 to $80 in some circumstances. But if we were to make that in the US, we would be selling a product for $3,000. And that is if I could talk them into doing it for me. That's if I had $1 million ready to show them and pay for the tooling and upfront investment. And how can just a guy like me with another buddy of mine and his friend start up a company with $1 million worth of investment? But we actually found a sheet metal vendor in China to do it, and our startup cost and a production run of 600 cost us right at about $35,000. That was $1 million to start this company in the US if they would do it. 35,000 and 600 products in China. Now, we did have to pay our importation fees. We did have to pay our shipping fees. So there were some fees incurring. Well, now with these tariffs, it is going to be rough. We were going to have to pay an extra $8,500 bill for our current cargo container of these sheet metal products. But luckily, our cargo container got to port 3 days before the tariffs took effect, sliding them through, allowing us to avoid that $8,500 bill. Now, at these slim margins we are running with the sheet metal company, that could be make or break. With the slim margins we are running on our knife company, that could be make or break. Now, don't get me wrong, guys. We prepared for this. As long as they don't last for 3 or 4 years, we should be good to go. But the point is, these tariffs will affect you. Now, what can you do about it? If you were looking for products that were made overseas, and a lot of things you think are not are made overseas, even assembled or made in the USA products often have overseas components in them just because of the specialist nature of certain countries. Countries can produce things at better prices than we can for one reason or another, and mainly that's due to labor rates. Things like we did. The U.S. invested in Taiwan to be a semiconductor producer. We invested. We paid for their facilities and factories, and now we are punishing them for selling us those semiconductors. So it's a very interesting relationship we are going through right now. And again, I'm not saying whether this is good or bad. This could create a ton of U.S. jobs. This could bring manufacturing back, or it could crumble the economy and cause U.S. jobs to evaporate. I don't know. And I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments section below. But if you have extra cash on hand and you were thinking about buying some of these imported goods and you maybe thought you would wait until the end of summer or after vacation or something like that, it may be the time to buy them. Right now, this pocket knife right here, just an example, I'm going to do another shameless plug, generally sold for $26.99. If the tariffs took effect, we'd have to start selling this for about $35, $40. Right now, we have it on sale for $18.99 with free Prime shipping because we prepared for this. We knew it was coming. We bought a lot of them specifically to get the prices low, specifically to save money, and specifically to beat the tariffs. So we are still putting our products on sale. There's a lot of companies that I talk about, like this guy right here, still affordable, still on sale. I don't know how long will last because the next batch that comes in starting now, if a shipping container lands from a ton of different countries, including Japan and China, Mexico, Canada, wherever, Taiwan, you are paying some pretty high tariffs. And that is paid by these companies. That is paid by me. That is paid by the company that owns this knife company. That is paid by the watch company that is bringing them in. And they have no choice but to raise the prices, which means you're going to be paying more. A lot of times companies, especially right now in 2025 with the market already slowing, are really running on slim margins. I mean, we are running on slim margins. So that's going to be tricky. Also, companies like mine really right now are not taking any profits. We are just reinvesting back into the company, and we had to reinvest so much to bring in so much product that we're not taking profits, and we haven't taken profits yet from our company. We are reinvesting in building, so there's not even profits that we can cut into right now to kind of absorb the costs. We merely would have to raise prices if we bring in another cargo container while the tariffs are in place. And that is something to consider if you were looking at a product. Now, the other thing is, I don't believe this is necessarily the end of the world for a lot of different industries, but it will make it very tough. And a lot of these industries employ people here in the U.S., like our knife company, that if it were to go under, might not have jobs anymore. So it's going to be a give and take, and there could be some financial turmoil, especially in the markets, if we don't see these tariffs kind of negotiate. Now, Trump did say that he was open to tariff negotiations, and hopefully everybody kind of comes to their senses, because I honestly believe we are so far down the line past the 90s and NAFTA and the Clinton era of moving things overseas. We have a world economic kind of structure going on right now that's hard to break from unless we just commit. And are we committing as a country? I'm not sure, but I'd love to hear, again, your thoughts in the comments section below. Thanks for watching, guys. Have a good one.